My name is Lorraine Mercer. I am 66 years old. The wind off Lake Michigan carried a faint chill as I stepped from my black sedan onto the polished stone steps of the Palatine Ballroom, one of Chicago's most prestigious wedding venues. My tailored navy suit hugged my frame, and my leather heels clicked firmly against the stone, a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Today was the day my daughter, Valeria, would marry. Decades of careful planning, support, and sacrifice played through my mind as I adjusted the straps of my handbag. Private school tuition, college applications abroad. Her first apartment, I had done my best to support her. I had contributed what I could, hoping she'd appreciate it. Through the grand glass doors, I glimpsed the floral arrangements, white peonies and blush roses artfully scattered across gold-trimmed tables. The crystal chandeliers reflected the sunlight in delicate prisms across the marble floor. Many details reflected my influence. Some elements, like the invitations, had been coordinated by my team with my guidance. Yet, despite the grandeur, a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. The scene was perfect, beautiful, nearly flawless, but all that beauty could not guarantee warmth, recognition, or welcome. As I walked toward the entrance, clutching my invitation, I felt the tension settle in my shoulders. The doors loomed ahead, and with each step, I sensed the first confrontation waiting just beyond the threshold. My daughter was there, and she was waiting. Valeria stood at the entrance, her wedding gown a cascade of ivory silk and hand-stitched lace, $15,000 of fabric and labor shimmering in the morning light. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable, and her eyes locked onto mine with a firmness that startled me more than I expected. "You're not invited. You're no longer one of us," she said, her voice even but sharp enough to slice through the soft hum of wedding preparations behind her. My breath caught. Every step I had taken toward this day, every investment of time, every $200,000 spent on invitations, flowers, and catering all for her now seemed invisible to her. Before I could speak, her father, my former husband-in-law, appeared behind her. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit, and he carried the air of someone accustomed to authority. "Lorraine, you must understand," he said smoothly. "Most of our guests have elite educational backgrounds. The main table is for close family and professional contacts. Seating is limited." I blinked, absorbing the weight of his words. Every detail of this wedding, from the venue, which cost nearly $50,000, to the designer gowns for the bridesmaids, totaling over $100,000, had been arranged and financed by me. Yet here I was, judged by a paper certificate I had never pursued, instead of my decades of work and accomplishments. Connor, Valeria's fiancé, stepped forward cautiously. "Mom, maybe you could sit at a secondary table. It would still let you be part of the day," he suggested, his eyes apologetic. But Valeria's mother-in-law shook her head sharply, her diamond bracelet glinting as she crossed her arms. "No, the seating is final. It would be disruptive. Please step aside." I felt a flush rise to my cheeks, and a strange hollow spread through me. The crowd of early arriving guests had begun to notice, murmurs rippling through the marble foyer. Public humiliation had never been part of my plan for today, yet here it was, tangible and raw. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched my purse. The weight of 2 decades of devotion colliding with the sharp reality of exclusion. I drew a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. "It's all right, daughter," I said softly, taking one measured step closer. "But check your phone first." I stood just beyond the marble threshold, feeling the eyes of the assembled guests grazing over me like icy blades. Every glance reminded me that my name, my work, and my contributions counted for nothing in their eyes. Valeria's father had made it clear my lack of a university degree rendered me invisible, irrelevant, beneath notice. Yet, I was no stranger to accomplishment. I had built Mercer Events, one of Chicago's top-tier event planning companies, from scratch, starting with a small office in a basement off Michigan Avenue. I had grown a team that now managed weddings and corporate galas with budgets exceeding $200,000 per event. My company's name was trusted by executives and philanthropists alike. And today, it was orchestrating every element of my daughter's wedding, yet no one seemed to see that. The family's dismissal was suffocating. They valued pedigree above all else. Degrees from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton were more important than decades of proven skill, discipline, and ingenuity. My daughter, whom I had supported since childhood with private schooling, international college placements, and financial guidance, now treated me as a mere outsider. I held my posture rigid, letting my calm mask my anger. Inside, a storm raged. Every meticulously planned contract, every dollar I had quietly directed toward this wedding, now felt like a weapon I had yet to draw. Their arrogance, their shallow sense of status, only sharpened my resolve. Connor lingered nearby, uneasy, aware of the tension. I acknowledged his presence with a brief nod. He understood, at least, that my influence was not measured by a diploma, but by years of work, strategy, and dedication. And I took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the pulse of control I still possessed. Their focus on status felt narrow, but I reminded myself that calm, measured response would show my influence without confrontation. Chapter 4: Memories of Sacrifice. As I lingered at the entrance, the murmur of early guests faded into a distant hum. My mind drifted backward through decades of effort, sleepless nights, and countless sacrifices. I remembered walking Valeria to her first day at Lincoln Park Preparatory School, adjusting her backpack, smoothing her hair, whispering encouragement. Every tuition payment, every school trip, every piano lesson had been mine to cover quietly, without complaint. Acceptance letters to universities abroad, countless forms, flights, and apartments co-signed in her name because she did not yet qualify for credit. Every detail I had managed. Significant sums had gone into her first apartment deposits, furnishings, and living expenses. Each step I had taken was to give her opportunities I never had, to provide a foundation she could build upon. Today, I had poured every ounce of my expertise and wealth into this wedding. The venue was booked for $45,000. Catering contracts totaled nearly $100,000. Flowers and centerpieces another $25,000. The invitations were luxurious, embossed and printed on high-quality paper. Designer gowns, tuxedos, linens, and table settings added another $30,000. Not counting the staff labor I had coordinated through Mercer Events, my company, to oversee every meticulous detail. Yet here I stood, frozen at the threshold, treated as a stranger, not for lack of contribution, not for lack of love, but for a single fact: I could never change my absence of a university degree. Every dollar, every plan, every sleepless night had been intended to lift her, celebrate her, honor her milestones, and now it seemed to render me invisible. I drew a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the weight of love and indignation. Maternal instinct wrestled with the sharp sting of rejection. Every memory of sacrifice, every investment of money and heart, now hung unresolved between us. Yet, beneath the hurt, a calm determination took root. I had done my part. It was time to let my presence and my power speak. I took a measured step closer to Valeria, keeping my expression neutral, my voice steady. Better look at your phone first, I said softly, letting the words hang in the air like a challenge wrapped in calm. Her eyes widened, confusion flickering across her face, and for a moment, she seemed unsure whether I was joking or serious. Around us, the chatter of early guests and the soft clatter of servers setting up the tables created a gentle backdrop. But I heard none of it. My focus was entirely on the unfolding tension, on the unspoken question of who held the real authority today. Valeria fidgeted with the delicate straps of her dress. Glancing down at her phone without understanding why she should, I felt the familiar pulse of control settle into my veins. Years of experience running Mercer events had taught me how to leverage timing, perception, and meticulous planning. My fingers, discreetly tapping on the interface of my tablet, set in motion confirmations and holds across every wedding contract: the florist, the caterer, the venue, even the valet and the musicians. Each action subtle, almost invisible, yet absolute in its effect. Valeria's confusion deepened as notifications appeared on her screen: confirmations, alerts, small adjustments she could not yet interpret. Her gaze darted back and forth, a flicker of unease shadowing her perfect composure. I held her eyes for a moment longer, letting her absorb the realization that not everything was as it seemed. The crowd beyond the entrance remained unaware, yet every element of the wedding: the tables, the linens, the flowers, the music, now subtly responded to my control. The calm mask I wore concealed the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing that every detail she had thought she owned, every lavish element she had believed to be secured by her family's wealth, now depended entirely on me. I stepped back slightly, letting the silence stretch, giving her time to process, to understand that underestimation of me had consequences she had not anticipated. Valeria's fingers trembled slightly as she swiped her phone open, eyes darting to the notifications that had begun piling up. At first, she thought it was a technical glitch, an alert from the florist confirming the delivery of roses she had assumed her family had paid for. Then came the caterer's confirmation: the entire luncheon, 300 guests, $150,000, fully accounted for and marked funded and approved. Her brow furrowed. Another alert showed the venue's deposit had been processed under her company's authorization, not the family's oversight. The lighting, the linens, even the small touches of gilded napkin rings were all logged as reserved and frozen by her mother's company system. A hush seemed to fall over the entrance as the first murmurs among the early arriving guests reached her ears. A server whispered to another, confused by the sudden change in setup orders. The assistant coordinator fidgeted with the placement chart, unable to reconcile the last-minute system updates. Valeria's hands shook, and she glanced at her father and Connor, seeking guidance, but found none. I watched her quietly, letting her take it in. The moment was delicate. A perfect balance of control and patience. I had orchestrated every detail, every payment, every confirmation, without a single guest realizing that the power rested in my hands. Not the groom's family, not Valeria, me, CEO and funder, simultaneously, and wholly indispensable. Her lips parted as she murmured, "Mom, how?" I stepped closer, my voice calm, deliberate, all of it. "Valeria, the invitations, the flowers, the catering, the venue, every element has been arranged and funded by Mercer Events. I am not just the mother you underestimated. I am the one who built this day." She stared at the screen, scrolling frantically, seeing every line of confirmation, every service frozen in place, and the realization hit. The lavish wedding she had assumed was secured by her family's wealth depended entirely on me, the woman she had dismissed, the woman without a college degree. Guests began to notice slight irregularities, the chairs out of alignment, the caterers pausing mid-task, the florists double-checking orders. Whispers rippled through the crowd, the tension, previously invisible, now hung in the air, thick and palpable. I smiled softly, allowing a hint of triumph to show. The day she had thought she controlled was, in fact, entirely under my guidance. Every element, every luxurious detail, and every expectation now rested with me, and she, for the first time, was forced to see it. I took a slow step into the grand foyer, the polished marble reflecting the soft light of the crystal chandeliers above. Valeria's eyes widened as she turned fully toward me, confusion and panic mingling in her gaze. I held up my tablet, the screen glowing faintly in the morning light, and let the room settle into a tense silence. "Let me make this clear," I said, my voice steady and calm, carrying across the entrance. "Every single aspect of this wedding, every payment, every contract, every service flows through Mercer Events. I am the one who arranged the venue, the catering, the floral designs, and the linens. I financed it, organized it, and ensured it would be flawless. None of it would exist without my company's planning and my authorization." A murmur ran through the early guests. Servers paused mid-step. Florists glanced nervously at each other, and the maitre d' hesitated, unsure whom to obey. Valeria's face drained of color as she glanced down at her phone again, scrolling frantically through confirmations. All major services, from catering to decorations, had been arranged carefully, with costs managed and approved by my team. Her father, my former husband-in-law, attempted to interject. "Lorraine, this is highly inappropriate," I raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Inappropriate. Perhaps, but visible to all is the truth. You have judged me, dismissed me for lacking a degree, and overlooked decades of work, sacrifice, and skill. Yet here we are. Your social standing, your Ivy League certificates, your wealth they do not control this day, I do." Valeria's mother-in-law gasped audibly, clutching her pearls. Connor, still hesitant, looked between us helplessly. The reality hit the room like a physical force. The wedding they had assumed was theirs to command was, in fact, orchestrated entirely by me. Every luxurious detail they took for granted, every elegant arrangement, every service they believed to be secured by their family's fortune, depended on my hands. Valeria's lips trembled. "Mom, I didn't realize." I let the words linger, the quiet weight of authority pressing down. Social prestige does not equal power. Certificates and appearances cannot replace real contribution. Today, the lesson is clear, and it is in front of everyone who once dismissed me. The guests' whispers grew louder. Servers resumed their work with anxious glances. Florists double-checked deliveries. And even the venue manager paused to nod in recognition of the truth. Valeria sank slightly, finally understanding that the carefully constructed world she thought she controlled was fragile, dependent, and entirely within my grasp. I straightened, letting my calm presence fill the space. This confrontation was not about anger or revenge. It was about clarity, authority, and the respect that should have been mine all along. For the first time that day, the room acknowledged who truly held power, and the lesson had only just begun. I tapped the final confirmation on my tablet, and immediately, every payment and service connected to the wedding went on temporary hold. The staff paused briefly, checking instructions as new confirmations appeared. Small adjustments rippled through the ballroom quietly, unnoticed by most guests. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the guests at first, but the effect rippled outward like a stone thrown into calm water. Valeria's face paled as she stared at her phone, watching alerts pop up one after another, deposits reversed, schedules adjusted, and confirmations marked pending authorization. Her hands shook, clutching the screen as if holding it could somehow stop the truth from sinking in. I glanced at the main table, where the groom's family had been presiding over the day with smug confidence. Their whispered discussions stuttered into silence as realization dawned. The lavish seating, the carefully arranged guest list, the impression of control they had assumed they were all contingent on my decisions, on my authority. Connor stood beside Valeria, tense and uncertain, knowing there was no easy way to mitigate the situation. He looked to me briefly, recognition and regret mingling in his gaze, before returning to his bride, who was visibly unraveling. The whispers of the early guests grew louder, the subtle chaos spreading. Reputation, once untouchable, was now fragile. The elitist facade of degrees, wealth, and social standing crumbled under the weight of undeniable reality. Those who had dismissed me, mocked my education, and questioned my relevance were now forced to confront the limits of their arrogance. I allowed the moment to linger, watching as panic and doubt replaced the confident composure they had worn like armor. The power they had assumed as a birthright was, in truth, conditional, and they were learning it in the most public way possible. And through it all, I remained calm. My hands rested lightly on my tablet, my posture steady, my gaze unyielding. The lesson was unfolding exactly as it should. Those who underestimated me were now seeing the truth, and their social dominance was crumbling before their eyes. I held the tablet firmly, letting every eye in the room feel the weight of truth. If my contributions are not recognized, I said evenly, then the consequences will follow. Every payment, every contract, every service rests with me, and the authority to halt or continue this day is mine. Valeria's lips parted, a flush creeping across her cheeks as she realized the scope of what she had assumed was her control. The groom's parents, once poised with haughty confidence, stiffened as they grasped that their social dominance and the image they had cultivated depended entirely on my approval. One by one, the guests sensed the shift. Murmurs grew louder. Whispers of disbelief and speculation traveled across the ballroom. The florists and catering staff paused, double-checking schedules and orders. The wedding arrangements, carefully budgeted and managed, now reflected her authority, showing that the day relied on her oversight. I stepped forward, my voice calm yet unwavering. Acknowledgement is simple. Recognition is earned by those who respect work, dedication, and trust, not by pedigree alone. Today, that lesson is being taught, and it is visible to everyone present. Valeria lowered her gaze, swallowing hard. The family's facade of control had crumbled without force, without anger, only through the quiet assertion of truth. Humiliation, accountability, and respect interwove in a single moment. And the room understood that I was not merely a mother they were facing, the authority they had chosen to dismiss. The chaos of the day had faded, leaving only a quiet hum of realization in its wake. I stepped onto the terrace, looking out over the Chicago skyline as the afternoon sun glinted off the river, reflecting shards of gold across the glass towers. The lessons of the day settled within me, letting go of the need to prove myself, exercising authority quietly but decisively, and loving unconditionally, even when it is not returned. Valeria approached slowly, her steps measured, her gaze lowered. She no longer clutched her phone, no longer relied on her assumptions of privilege. Instead, she spoke with a voice tempered by humility, acknowledging her mistakes and her dependence on the very mother she had tried to exclude. She had learned, painfully but truly, the cost of entitlement and arrogance. I nodded, letting her presence and acknowledgement wash over me. There was no celebration here, no grand reconciliation, only understanding. I turned back toward the city, calm and resolute. My legacy, my work, my integrity, and the authority I had quietly commanded remained intact. The family, the guests, and the social circle that had dismissed me now understood the value of respect and contribution. And I knew, in the cool wind off Lake Michigan, that in the balance of power, respect, and accountability, the true victory had always been mine.